Okay, and you want to really make sure that you're leaving at such a time so that you're not going to be late. I know that, with the weather and things like that being as unpredictable as perhaps it can be, just please, number one, always keep your safety at the front. Safety first. However, do try your best to not be late. When you get to the school, you want to stop into the school office before heading to your classroom. They'll have you sign in and probably give you a visitor sticker. So, your role, and I'm going to go through several different facets of your role as an as an observer and a participant in the classroom. Your job is to try and learn what's going on and try and tease out why things are happening the way that they are. You're there to develop an understanding without judging. And that oftentimes is really difficult for my students who are coming in fresh. And, I've had students who have, starting on the very first day, had really wonderful ideas about how the teacher should change their practice and do things differently. And in a couple of cases, I've even had students who, after that very first day, took it upon themselves to provide that wonderfully constructive criticism to their cooperating teacher immediately when they got home that night. Please don't let that be you. Nobody who is in a professional teaching position wants to receive feedback from somebody who hasn't even completed their degree yet. So, your job is to remain an objective observer and try to understand what's going on without passing judgment. You are entering a classroom in the middle of the year. It's the same as starting a novel in the middle of the book. It's hard to figure out what came before. You don't know what's happened in the story before you got there. So, suspend judgment. Also, your role is to strive to develop a broader understanding of the entire system and functioning of the school district, and the school and the community. So you want to be asking questions about how does all of this stuff work together? What's the actual day like? Sure, you know what it's like from a student's perspective. And as you go through and you spend a couple of days in the school, you will also see it from the teacher's perspective. But remember, there are a ton of other personnel in that building that help the functioning. So you want to be thinking about who are all the other personnel that are involved in producing an entire school day, an entire school week, or an entire school year. And how do they all work together? What do they contribute? So when I'm talking about other personnel, I'm talking about like the school psychiatrist, and school social worker, guidance counselor. What does the principal actually do? I know they usually have the nicest office in the entire building, but what does the principal actually do? And if you think that the principal's just about yelling at the kids who are naughty, that's not the case. Superintendent, what does the superintendent do? I know in a lot of districts they make a lot of money, but what do they actually do? And the school board. Who's the school board? What do they do? And how does that affect teachers and students? So those are some of the things I want you to get in there and take a look at, how does this all fit together? As you're going through and trying to develop an understanding, I want you to try and put a big picture together and be thinking about, what is the student's unique context? Who are these students that you're working with, that you're coming in contact with? What is their family of origin? What is their family background? What kind of family structure do they have? What is their socioeconomic status? What is the community like that they're from? What's the neighborhood like? What is the student's achievement? What is the student's experience in school? What are their attitudes like towards school? How do they feel about themselves as a learner? Do they even care about being in school? Why? What For a lot of kids, I mean, they don't see a whole lot of reason to care about being in school. So I want you to really try to focus on, understanding the student's context. And then, also look at the teacher's context and, what's actually expected of them. And, who is expecting things of them. That for me, that was one of the hardest things to kind of digest when I got into the classroom. I was prepared to be thinking about, my expectations for my students. And I didn't really think too much about what the students' expectations were of me. And let me tell you, in college, they never told me that I needed to really be aware of the lunch lady's expectations for me, because I had no idea how much trouble I was going to get into when I got in trouble for, I wasn't returning my tray quickly enough after I had eaten, and I angered the lunch ladies. And that wasn't very good because they were good friends with the secretaries in the office. And you want to know how to play nice with everybody, what everybody expects of teachers. What do the parents expect? What does the principal expect? What do the students expect? What are the teachers' perspectives on all of these different and oftentimes conflicting expectations? And what are the teachers' prior experiences with students and their situations themselves, and how is that perhaps influencing the ways that they act in the classroom? And prior experiences with students oftentimes will help us determine how many extra chances we give a student, or if we overlook that outburst, or if a student gets up and is disruptive. Our prior experiences with students affect how we react. And that's also why it's really important for you not to judge, because you don't know what those prior experiences are. In addition, your role is to try teaching and see what you think. And you're going to have an opportunity to actually try your hand at teaching. You'll be videotaping that, and we'll talk about that later. You're going to need to get in there and meet your students, get to know them, engage with them, get to know them, find out what makes them tick, find out what they care about, find out what they like about school, what they hate about school. Push yourself beyond your comfort level and participate. For some of you, participating is going to be a lot easier than for others. Those of you who are really introverted like I am, it's going to take some pushing. But, find a student that looks like they could use a friend, and get out there and just say hi and what you got going on, and see what happens. So I want you to really get out there and observe everything. I want you to see everything that's going on. I don't want you hiding in your classroom. Not that it would actually be hiding, but I don't want you in that classroom all day, every day. I want you to observe a bunch of different classes. I want you to see how teachers actually prepare for their classes. What do they actually do? I want you to be in the hallway, especially if you're at the middle school, and I want you to observe what goes on during class change. I want you to see what recess is like if you have recess. I don't want you inside in the comfort of the little classroom. I want you outside in your parka and all of that stuff, seeing what recess is really like, because wow, recess is a whole different world, and so is lunch. I always say lunch is the hardest hour of the day, as is recess, because it's unstructured, and kids, if something's going to go wrong, that's often when it happens. So if you have study halls or a resource room, library, that, go observe, figure out what's going on, see what the school has to offer. You should also spend some time in the workroom and see what's available for teachers, the teachers' lounge. Do not ever talk about students in the teachers' lounge, though. Never ever talk about the students, and never ever talk about another teacher in the teachers' lounge, saying, critiquing or saying something about what they were doing in the classroom. Even if you're saying something positive, you run the risk of that going back to somebody in a way that you hadn't intended. If you're invited to attend meetings, do so. If you're allowed to attend an IEP meeting, do it. Parent-teachers conferences, choir conferences, theater performances, school board meetings, any of that, go. If you can go to any sort of professional development, do. If there are support services that are having meetings before or after school, go. And if there are any after school activities, if you'd like to observe, what teachers do when they're supervising extracurricular activities, go. Have some fun with it and see what you might like to do once you get into the profession. So explore broadly, network, meet other teachers, meet the other personnel in the building, create your own opportunities, ask people about what they do. People love talking about their jobs. Ask if you can observe in other classrooms. Ask if you can observe other positions besides the teachers. And while you're doing that, make sure that you are respecting the efforts of your cooperating teacher. Communicate, and if there's going to be any times that you're not going to be there when they know that you're going to be in the building, like you're going to go and observe another classroom for an afternoon or so, just let them know. Use professional courtesy there. One of the things that I'm really going to encourage you to do as you're observing other classrooms is to take a look at how other teachers teach. If you're only in one classroom or you're in only one area of specialty, such as music or PE, you're really narrowing the experience for yourselves. So I want you to get out there, observe a variety of classrooms, grades, content areas, and notice the different instructional approaches that are used. And oftentimes, the best teachers are those who can pull from the most effective practices across all the different disciplines. So start collecting really cool examples of awesome teaching. As you get into classrooms, I want you to notice how classes begin and how teachers stage the ending of class, how they transition students between one activity and another, how they talk about learning targets and exit slips, for example. Classroom management is something that for a lot of you, it's going to freak you right out. And that's okay. Classroom management is something that we learn over time. And classroom management is also something that can be developed by thoughtful use of routines and processes. See, this is why I had you read the Atomic Habits book, because habits, routines, processes, things like that, those all go together. And a lot of classroom management falls apart because those routines, practices, habits aren't put into place. And the classroom climate, by that I don't mean the temperature of the room. I mean how welcoming is this? How welcoming is the physical space, and what does the actual classroom environment feel like? Is it a welcoming space? Do the kids get along? Um, is there a community feeling? Do the kids trust each other? Do you see kids helping each other? How do you see the teacher treating the students? Do you see the teacher, having one-on-one conversations with the students and listening? Do you see the teacher talking more than listening? Those are all components of classroom climate, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, but that's one of the things that I want you to be observing for. And then, of course, how lessons and instruction is structured, and why it's that way, and grading and assessment. Perhaps one of the most important things that you'll be working on is getting to know students. And I can't stress this enough, that this is perhaps the most important work that you'll do, is learning how to get to know your students, and then really trying to pay attention to youth culture. So as you're talking with students and working with them, you want to pay attention and start honing in on what they're into. You want to observe the peer interactions. You want to see the different cliques, or see how different groups of students treat each other. Notice what they care about. Notice how they speak. Notice their background. And as you basically eavesdrop on the conversations that they have together, you're going to start learning a little bit more about their background, and about their family life, and about their friends, and really about how they see themselves. And so that kind of information is extremely valuable for a teacher who's tuned in, because all of this gives us cues into how we can design instruction, how we can build relationships, so that we can actually reach these students.